Was denn den Moosruf? Nein, ich glaube nicht. Also es ist 8, 8, 4, 4 zusammen. Eine 8 zusammen.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking your seats. We're going to begin shortly. Welcome. Welcome, everybody, to the third UN World Data Forum. The forum where we're going to ask the questions that you want answered. Are we building capacity in the right way? What do we do to stop people being left behind? How do we ensure availability and frequency of data? How do we balance privacy and transparency? What have we learned from COVID? Has it been a wake-up call in the way that we produce, collect, communicate data? And of course, there is that small issue of the SDGs, and we know that they're hanging in the balance, and that investment in data is essential if we're to track progress, keep governments accountable, and put data in the hands of citizens. So my name is Claire Doul. I have Swiss and British nationalities. I live in Geneva, and I am really delighted to be with you for a very productive forum. Over to you, Arthur.
Yeah, welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to have you, be it virtually from all over the world, as we've become accustomed to, or here in person, which I think is something we all have to get used to again, right? My name is Arthur Honager. I am a Swiss journalist. I was born and raised in the Alps, and as I'd like to say, it's all downhill from there. Now, if you Google the term data is the new, then you come up with the usual metaphors. Data is the new oil. Data is the new gold, and so on. Yet, as you all know, many people talk a big deal about big data, but few really understand its origins, its dynamics, or its potential. It's just a fashionable term. So in a way, data really is the new black. Yeah, well, black as in a black box too, that people don't understand, and I count myself in that as well. And that's a risk, that people don't understand it, but it's also a chance. It's a chance for this very forum here. No doubt we've come far since the first such gathering in Cape Town back in 2017 and in Dubai the following year. But it's just not enough to generate and process quality data. We have to make societies understand it in order to build trust in data and statistics. And no better place to do this than this very gathering, where we explore innovations and synergies across various different data ecosystems to harness the potential in data to reach the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. Speaking of sustainability, by the way, we try to do our part here also when it comes to the little things. Take plant-based catering, for example, public transport. The World Data Forum is proud to be a sustainable and climate-neutral event. Now, let me introduce a man who has spent the last 2 years knee-deep in data, as he is the person responsible for fighting the COVID-19 pandemic in the Swiss government. Please welcome a federal councillor and head of the Swiss Department of Home Affairs, Mr. Alain Berset.
Thank you very much. Dear ambassadors, dear participants of this UN World Data Forum, ladies and gentlemen. To those of you attending this hybrid event in person, welcome to Bern. I'm glad you could make it. And of course, a warm welcome to all of you joining us online. I'm very pleased to be here with you this afternoon for the opening of the forum. I'm sure you are all familiar with Winston Churchill's famous quotes. The only statistics you can trust are those you falsified yourself. And a few years ago, those words would still have raised a smile. But today, in the age of fake news, that smile has gone. Because there are a lot of fake statistics doing the rounds at the moment. They distort public perception, and they are making it extremely difficult to have rational debates. Debates we depend on, especially during a pandemic. And ladies and gentlemen, the quote is wrong, by the way. What Churchill actually said was, you must look at the facts because they look at you. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the facts are looking at us, and they are smiling because they show that the world has become a better place. Health, prosperity, education, life expectancy, peace, democracy, and security. On all these counts, things have developed for the better in the last 50 years. One example, since 2000, there has been enormous progress in achieving the targets of universal primary education. The total enrollment rates in developing regions reached 91% in 2015. And the worldwide number of children out of school has declined by almost half. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is only half the story. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed the picture dramatically. The rate of global extreme poverty has risen for the first time in over 20 years. 100 million people were pushed back into extreme poverty in 2020. And as of mid-September this year, the total number of deaths from COVID-19 reached 4.7 million globally. And the progress made in recent years is in danger of being undone by the pandemic. And that's why, I think that's why it was all the more important that in September 2015, the world signed up to the social contracts of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its 17 goals. This was a key moment. This was a key moment. The goals cover today's most pressing challenges: eradicating poverty and hunger, schooling for all, gender equality and women's empowerment, fighting malaria and other diseases, environmental sustainability, peace, jobs, climate change, health, and welfare. And by adopting this social contract, the UN and its member states sets us on the path to act together. And the 17 goals of the 2030 Agenda give us a framework within which we must work and act together to find solutions. But we know, ladies and gentlemen, we will probably not achieve many of these goals. Even in Switzerland, we are not yet where we want to be. In 2019, more than 700,000 people were affected by income poverty. And we expect that this figure has increased during the COVID-19 pandemic. But we must remain committed. And the more complex the challenges, the more important it becomes to collaborate internationally. This is also true for data which is a joint strategic asset. Because if you want to improve something, you have to measure it. The UN World Data Forum brings together data and statistics experts and data users, including those from government and civil society. Its goal is to spur data innovation and to mobilize political and financial support for data and statistics so that the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development can be supported in the best way possible. And this UN World Data Forum is dedicated to creating an information basis for political engagements, which is why it is so essential. Dear participants, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone involved for their cooperation, especially the UN Statistics Division and the Programme Committee. I hope you have many stimulating discussions over the next 3 days here in Bern. This UN World Data Forum will take us further. The Bern Data Compact for a decade of action on the Sustainable Development Goals will point us towards the road beyond Bern. Ladies and gentlemen, statistics are an essential point of reference in a world where sustainability has become a matter of survival. Their power lies in them being informative. If we look at them without blinkers, and if we use them to guide our actions. The world will become more volatile in the next years and decades. From climate change and migration to geopolitical uncertainty and growing inequality. And this is why we need reliable data to understand the state of the world and to be able to act accordingly. That is the real state of the world, not the imagined one. We must have the facts. We must have the facts and look at them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Federal Councillor, and we can see that, yes, we must have the facts, and that with the COVID-19 pandemic, we did see that facts can save lives. Of course, there are huge data groups, and as the Federal Councillor said, it's the forum's responsibility to bring together the experts who can fill those gaps. And the UN is playing a leading role and will launch various initiatives at this forum. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, who has this video message for us.
Welcome to the World Data Forum. My thanks to Switzerland for hosting this important event together with the United Nations family. This forum has become a critical space for bringing data communities together, showcasing solutions, and nurturing partnerships to make data for all a reality. Timely, open, quality data are more essential than ever. As we confront a cascade of challenges, from COVID-19 to climate emergencies, we rely on data to understand what we face, guide our response, and track progress. The United Nations is committed to unlocking and nurturing data as a strategic asset for better decisions and stronger support to people and planet. Stronger support to countries, the statistics community, and the broader data ecosystem are at the heart of this effort. We must ensure data empowers individuals and communities, but also protects them when they are most at risk. As my report on our common agenda sets out, we must invest in harnessing data responsibly, grounded in values and human rights. And we must prioritize data investments to better anticipate, prevent, and respond to complex risks, including in fragile and hard-to-reach contexts, leaving no one behind. I welcome the launch of new financing instruments, such as the Global Data Facility and the Complex Risk Analytics Fund at this year's forum. A new UN Peace and Security Data Hub will break down bureaucratic divides and empower users in the quest for peace. Guided by our Common Agenda report and the Cape Town Global Action Plan for Sustainable Development Data, the World Data Forum is creating new avenues for all stakeholders. I count on you to join these ecosystems and together realize the potential of data for people, planet, prosperity, and peace. I wish you every success.
That's a lot of important points we've heard here, and it's a good reminder why we've come together in Bern. To let these thoughts sink in, we now have a little musical interlude planned for you. Nothing better to let the mind wander than music, and nothing more Swiss than the Alp horn. So be prepared for traditional sounds with a twist. Here's horn roll.
very much, Honager, and I think we now have to come out of our reverie in the Swiss Alps and get back to the serious subject of data. The next person, our next speaker, knows quite a lot about data. Brad Smith is the president of a company that if you just looked at his name, you'd think that it was a rather small company, Microsoft. Actually, it's one of the world's biggest, and it's a real active partner with the Swiss Confederation and with the UN, helping them design data systems. And it's my real pleasure now to introduce Brad Smith, president of Microsoft, and here is his video message.
Hello, I'm Brad Smith, the president of Microsoft, and I'm delighted to be with you today. I want to thank the Swiss Confederation for hosting this event, and I want to take a few moments to address the important issues you're working to advance as part of the UN World Data Forum. It doesn't matter what the problem is in the world, the truth is data can play an indispensable role in helping us to solve it. And if there are any doubters in the world, all we need to do, I think, is consider our experience the past 2 years with COVID-19. Just think, throughout our lives, we'd get up in the morning and there was an important data point we would all want to know about. It was called the weather forecast. What would the temperature be? Would it rain or snow, or would it be sunny? Well, the last year, we've also been asking about something else. What's the COVID rate? What's happening with hospitalizations? How are we doing with vaccinations? And what we've found is that it became impossible to advance the world's work to address a pandemic unless we could create a foundation in each and every country around the world to harness the power of data. That's what the World Health Organization did. That's what we at Microsoft helped the WHO do. And that is what we're all going to need to do even more as we address climate and every other issue that's important. So how do we do that? Well, I would point to three things, three among many, but three that I think are particularly important. First, we have to ensure and protect trust in data. If people are going to be comfortable looking to these sources of data, if they're going to be comfortable providing data, we have to ensure trust in data in the first place. What does that mean? Well, I think fundamentally it means protecting security and privacy, that we protect data sets against cybersecurity attacks, and we put in place the right kinds of principles and safeguards so that people's data can be aggregated, but not in ways that disclose their identity or their personal information. And we're developing new technological approaches with anonymized data and other approaches to manage this. But we have more work to do. But trust in data, I think, in some ways, needs to be cause number one. And then we need to focus on what I think of as cause number two. How do we advance open data? And in the world today, I think that often means giving organizations the ability to federate data sets so that small organizations can work on an even playing field together with the largest organizations, often tech companies around the world. You look across Europe, you see something like Gaia-X, you see other initiatives in other parts of the world, you see the work of the major humanitarian organizations and the UN agencies. You look at the development banks, and everywhere you look, you see open data initiatives advancing. We need to lean in, we need to support these efforts, we need to come together as a tech sector to help support it as well. And we need to refine the methodologies that the world will rely upon to encourage more open data sets and their use. We need to encourage the public sector around the world to take public data and make it more readily available. And we need to bring all of this together in a way that will increasingly, I think and hope, make open data a norm and a practice that we come to expect. And then there's the third and final cause I want to address. This is not about data necessarily, it's about people. It turns out that the fundamental challenge for advancing the use of data is really the fundamental challenge that we see in every area of science and technology. We need to help more people acquire the skills needed to make a contribution and to find important jobs in this field. Everywhere we look, we see actually a shortage of skilled labor. We need to expand opportunities for more people to acquire these skills. We need to work with institutions at all levels in a variety of public and private sector fields. We need to make this a global cause to spread the skills that people will need to advance the other two causes I mentioned. All of these, I believe, are causes that you all can advance this week and every week as we look to the future. If we can protect trust in data, if we can open it up and make open data the new normal, if we can spread the skills that people will need, we will do something that will not only be important to people who come together for an event like this to talk about data, we will make a difference for every single challenge the world needs to surmount. So thank you for what you're doing. I hope that we at Microsoft can play the kind of role that will help all of you advance this even more. Thank you.
You heard it. Make a difference in every single global challenge. It's quite a task at hand for data science here. You see, the impact of this forum, of your everyday work, it's very immediate, because data shapes the world we perceive every second, and it also shapes the future, though. That's the world that our kids will live in. That's why the young generation needs to have a voice, and at the UN, that voice comes from the youth delegates. It's a great pleasure now to have two of those representatives here with us. Please welcome Nicola Kurek from Switzerland and Alicia Maldonado from Peru.
If it wasn't for data, we wouldn't know how many people are living with health insurance. If it wasn't for data, we wouldn't know how many migrants and refugees are seeking shelter worldwide. If it wasn't for data, we wouldn't know how many indigenous peoples are being killed because of defending their lands. If it wasn't for data, we wouldn't acknowledge how many women suffer from gender-based violence. If it wasn't for data, we wouldn't know how to quantify the negative impact done to the environment and realize how little time we have left until we act. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is my utmost pleasure to be here with you in person despite this pandemic. I am Alicia Maldonado, UN Youth Delegate from Peru, and I am looking forward to an interesting exchange of ideas and experiences about the use of data to reach the SDGs. I also want to acknowledge the privilege we all have by being here today, as we need to be responsible for bringing up the voices we represent with all its diversity. I think we can all agree that the need for transparent, real-time disaggregated data is fundamental to reach the SDGs. We need to have disaggregated data on gender, sex, geographical location, age, race, ethnicity, income, migratory status, disability status, among others. Data showcases the inequities we need to tackle as a society. However, I would like to highlight some points where some populations are being left behind in data gathering and ways to improve it. Let's think of one of the basic questions we get when we answer a survey. Gender. Female, male, but where are non-binary people? Where are transgender women and transgender men? They're not visible, but they do exist. They have the necessity to be included in policy design. But how could this be possible if they do not appear on many statistics? If data is not gathered in such a way that the identification of LGBTQI+ community is made visible, then policies based on that data are leaving them behind. Another issue to bear in mind is language. Lots of countries in the world are plurilingual. In the case of Peru, we have a beautiful diversity of languages spoken mainly by indigenous communities. However, there is still a need to do all the data collection, processing, and publication in native languages, not only the predominant one, which in our case, it is Spanish. Many people speaking a native language have needs such as lack of access to clean water, education, healthcare, basic services. Data should be collected and made easy to understand in all the languages. Let's decolonize institutions. Let's recognize and empower diversity. And finally, when implementing the collection of disaggregated data, there should be adequate training for all the personnel involved in all the processes of data collection. The people should know why the data they are collecting is important. It may sound obvious, but as a young medical doctor, I had to register data from my patients about their health issues affecting them, along with my colleagues. At first, we didn't understand why this was important, but then someone else explained it to us and showed how we should gather that data. We ought to pay attention to all the steps in data collection to ensure its quality and how it reflects the population's reality. This being said, apart from well-trained human resources, there should be availability of digital technologies and internet connection to ease the process and make it efficient. Data collection needs to be friendly with all the people involved, and its importance should be clearly stated. Otherwise, we may lose valuable data. To sum up, disaggregated data makes invisible people visible to the eyes of the policymakers. So it's not only about saying that we need disaggregated data. It's about implementing it in such a way that it's truly leaving no one behind. Having an intercultural and intersectional approach and turning it into concrete action through policies. Thank you.
Mr. Federal Councillor, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to be here talking to you as one of the 3 Swiss UN youth representatives. In the past 2 weeks, I have asked young people around the country what they would like me to say in their name at the UN World Data Forum. Some spoke about how their data is being used by social media companies. Some of them warned against the dangers of spurious correlation when studying big data. Most of them, however, asked me to repeat the question. World what forum? Data. What do you mean? So as the forum begins, I'd like to ask a few questions from somebody who's not at all familiar with the data world. And I'd like you to try and answer those questions in the next few days. Question number 1. What is data? What does it mean? I know my personal data can get stolen, bought and sold somewhere on the dark net, but what does it really mean? To me, it is a scary word. Number 2, I understand and acknowledge how facts, statistics are necessary to understand the situation and make a decision about it. How do I, as a non-specialist, get complete and accurate data when I need it? Last year, in my speech to the UN General Assembly's Youth Forum, I mentioned the worldwide phenomenon of children and teenagers being confronted to pornography online. It is something for which specialists warn against the dangers, especially when teenagers start sexually educating themselves by watching a content that is a largely fictional sexuality, often violent, in which the female body is often objectified. I had data, but it was mostly obtained by asking kids in school about their internet usage. Now, I could very well imagine some kids would lie. How do I, myself, know the data I'm using is accurate? I understand the overall keyword here is data literacy. I believe we should all be data literate in a society where information and disinformation spreads so quickly. We need to have some kind of informational immune system. In 1 year, we boosted hand hygiene. It's time to boost information hygiene. Data hygiene is an aspect of it. This won't stop the spread of fake news, but at least people who continue spreading it will have less excuses. I think to make people understand data and statistics, the data professionals have an enormous responsibility. See, I've been on the website of the UN data strategy, and I've seen a lot of complicated words, but very little concrete examples which would explain to me what this strategy serves. Now, I'm a law student, and good lawyers, when they talk to the courts, they use the complicated legal jargon. But when they talk to their clients, if they're good, they explain that in an understandable manner. I believe data professionals should do the same. Lastly, but probably most importantly for my generation, and this is something many of the young people I spoke with told me about, something must be done about information bubbles on social media. They're possible because of the data that's gathered and used by algorithms to identify what we like and what we don't. My generation almost exclusively informed themselves on social media. And myself, a few months ago, after a referendum that happened in Switzerland, was super surprised that 56% of the population approved the bill, while I had seen only one post in favor of it on my social media feed. Those bubbles are a threat to democracy, not in 10 years, now, and especially in countries like mine, where we vote all the time. I wanted to tell you, before I get done, that I really believe your work here is crucial. I've read in a paper that in 2010, it was estimated that in 2 days, the same amount of data was produced than since the beginning of history until 2003. This means that the directions you're setting now will have a tremendous impact on how my classmates will be working with you in 5 years, maybe 10, on those very data. And you have here a tremendous responsibility. So I count on you. Please here think long term and help the world with data. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Alicia and Nicolas. And I'm a former journalist, and Arthur is a working journalist. And you can see he's working. He's been writing down those questions, and we promised to get you some answers. And I would also agree that, I mean, how great was that? How clear were those speeches? And of course, for data literacy, that's exactly what you've got to do, and communicate and make it clear. And young people are just fantastic at this, because if we think about climate activists and Greta Thunberg, we can all remember what she's saying, because it's so clear. So, to mark the UN World Data Forum, the Swiss Confederation and the Swiss Council of Youth Activists had the brilliant idea of launching a video competition called Sustainability in Numbers. And they asked school children across Switzerland to produce a video on the SDGs. And the jury, you could say, had their own KPIs. What were they looking for? Creativity, quality, and effectiveness. Did they get their message across? Well, I'm going to let you be the judge of that. We're going to see the winner in the age group of 14 to 16. First prize went to the Jean Piaget School in Neuchâtel for their video on SDG 14, Life Below Water.
Les activités directement liées à la mer génèrent 3 000 milliards de dollars par an, soit 5% du PIB mondial. L'océan est rentable, mais l'océan est en danger. Pendant les dernières décennies, le pH des océans a baissé de 0,1. En cause, le CO2 atmosphérique stocké, environ 30% des émissions humaines. La consommation mondiale de poissons par personne est passée de 9 kg en 1961 à 20,5 kg en 2018. Certaines espèces sont donc menacées, notamment par la surpêche. En 2015, 33% des stocks de poissons étaient en situation de surpêche. D'autres organismes, comme les coraux, sont affectés par l'acidification de l'océan. 50% des récifs coralliens ont disparu au cours des 30 dernières années. Chaque seconde, c'est l'équivalent d'un camion poubelle de plastique qui est déversé dans l'océan, soit 8 à 12 millions de tonnes par an. Ces déchets plastiques causent la mort par an de plus d'1 million d'oiseaux marins et de 100 000 mammifères marins. En conclusion, la situation des océans empire de jour en jour. Le 14e objectif de développement durable de l'ONU pour 2030 vise à conserver et exploiter de manière durable les océans, les mers et les ressources marines aux fins du développement durable. Réussirons-nous à relever le défi ?
So there we are, they've done it again. They've made something very complex, very simple, with some really striking statistics. And this school is obviously amazing because in the next category, the 17 to 18 years, they also won the prize, the Jean Piaget School in Neuchâtel, with this video called End of Mother Earth, making SDG 15 life on land.
No doubt, a lot to think about. Back here to accompany our thinking, so to speak, are the Alpine Artists from Honager.
Thank you so much. I have sort of goosebumps when you sang. It was just lovely. Thank you very much, Hornrow.
As you know, the goal of the World Data Forum is to bring together experts from various data-related fields in order to form a productive dialogue. That's why we're thrilled to have 4 experts here now on a stage that have unique expertise and perspective on the core question, does data drive societies? And more so, should it? Professor Vincent Hendricks, he's the director of the Center for Information and Bubble Studies at the University of Copenhagen and a thoughtful observer of the data revolution.
Susan Wilding is head of the Geneva office of Civicus, a global alliance dedicated to strengthening citizen action and civil society. And it's the biggest in the world, based in the global south. Welcome.
Mr. David Bresch, he specializes in calculating climate change-related risks at the Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. Welcome.
And Ola Awad is one of the world's most distinguished statisticians. She's the president of the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics and co-chair of the high-level group for partnership, coordination and capacity building for statistics, the group that's responsible for the data used to attain the SDGs. We're going to start with a very quick fire round. How does data drive your lives, and does it drive you crazy? Vincent.
It sure does me crazy. We've never seen so much information in the world as we have now. We never had so much data in the world now. The only problem is we don't have more attention to spare in terms of consuming all this information that we're getting. So there's a fierce competition about what sort of information we should spend our very scarce attention on. And that creates a host of problems for the way in which we have to navigate in the world. And if I were to ask people here whether or not they think their autonomy is in order, just because they have a lot of information available, the problem is our autonomy is having a hard time by just navigating in this pool of information in and by itself. So data literacy on one hand, as one of youth ambassadors said, and also making sure that the data is inclusive in ways that everybody feels represented.
Yep.
So, Ola, do you feel the same? Because you're a statistician. Your job is to make sense of data. So are you sometimes overwhelmed by them as well?
Well, if I was asked the questions maybe 5 years ago, it's going to be different. But now you see that, you're talking about our lives are actually linked with data, so it's actually together. And we came into, I may say, into the process that that data is going actually to drive society. So we are actually now in the process of that.
How about you?
Does it drive you crazy? That's what we really want to know.
Yes.
No, I agree that there's just an overload of data, but how relevant is that data to my life? How relevant is that data to my work? And how relevant is that data to the human rights defenders that we support and to our members? Is that data reflective? Is it time responsive? Are our citizens able to use that data in a way that affects their own lives?
Well, data that affects all of our lives is the data related to climate change, right? So I guess probably every now and then you're driven crazy by the data. Tell me.
Crazy. It's probably more, it's quite sobering to see the state of the world reflected in data. And what I wonder, do we have the joint capacity to contextualize? Do we have the chance to put that into context, which leads us to action? That's what really keeps me, say, awake at night. It's not so much the sheer volume of data, but do we build the capacity not only to understand it, but to act accordingly and, I would say, responsibly on that data?
Really, what counts is action, and the UN Secretary General alluded to that as well. But is the perception of policymakers really driven by data? It seems that every couple of years, after every IPCC report, you have a wave triggered of declarations, but looking at the progress, looking at the data since 2015, when it comes to climate change, it's a disappointment.
I would say that data is relevant to inform decisions, but it does not preempt decisions. And policymaking is, and others in that room know it much better than me, is all about joint decision making. So between data, understanding data, finding options, and probably also opportunities, that's much more than what the IPCC can and shall deliver. So for me, that body is essential in understanding the state of the planet in climate matters, probably combined with biodiversity, but then also it shall by no means be policy prescriptive. So there is an element in it which leads into decision making, but ultimately many other factors, not least cultural ones, have to play a big role in that. And in that sense, I would say tremendous contribution, but most in that effort are also fully aware of the fact they present the state of the world, and now it's then time to take that over and to bring it into the decision-making body. Especially, last point on that, in democracies it means we have to make sure we really find ways that people can, in simple but not simplistic terms, understand the complexity we're all wrestling with.
As they say also, politics is the art of the possible, but is that enough?
Is what enough?
To be the art of the possible, because it seems rather slow if we keep on the topic of climate change. I mean, the pace is just not where it needs to be.
Well, look, now this is a room full of statisticians, and statisticians are like academics, just like myself. We sort of think that truth will sell itself. And I'm sorry to say it doesn't sell itself. What does sell itself are narratives. And narratives are the ones on which you base short-term policy. And so what the politicians tend to be looking at is not the long-term effects or the truth on a long-term scale. What we tend to look at, because that's how policy often works, is we're looking at narratives that sells. But selling narratives is not the same as selling the truth. You can sell a lot of misinformation narratives without coming anywhere close to the truth.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's the reason why there has to be this very delicate relation that David is talking about between truth and reliable numbers on one hand that does not sell itself, and narratives on the other that may sell themselves. And as our esteemed Youth Representative Nicholas was saying before, the Third World Data Forum, who? What? The truth is a lot of people don't know about it. And why? Because we are not good enough at selling the reliable narratives to the public.
I mean, I think, though, that companies are really good at selling their narrative. They're all going green at the moment. You know, the trading companies, the fossil fuel companies, they're all going to be carbon neutral by 2050 or whatever. But I'm sort of interested in, David, the sort of data there. Who's keeping check on whether they're really doing that, or is it just greenwash?
No, I think we're far beyond greenwash. That's the good news. But sure, measurement, reporting, and verification is a very delicate issue, especially for private sector actors, which often have, again, many different goals to meet, and how you balance that. And I think important is there, again, the civil society holds them accountable. And that's a place where I think, especially in Glasgow, we have to really make sure we get to grips with that we do find ways to basically make the nationally determined contributions of countries really verifiable by citizens. And this is not a trivial feat. But if we don't achieve that, then it will be very, very hard to push society to really transform. And I think that element, I see the private sector often rather as a helping hand, a segue into that, than as an obstacle. But only, and then comes journalism in, just please keep pushing, keep poking, that's important.
Susan, civil society, there we are. I mean, you've obviously achieved a lot, and, you know, people like Greta, she's got a really strong message, you know, follow the science, follow the data. But, you know, there is this sense that, well, policymakers are not really following the data, otherwise we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in. I mean, we're going to see that, aren't we, at the COP26? So I'm just sort of wondering, what is civil society? What can you do more than you're already doing?
Well, what we can do more of, I think the value that we've seen, especially at Civicus, when we tried to put people in data, we initially thought we'd create a parallel citizen-generated monitoring system, and that would be enough. And we found that's not the value add for civil society. Civil society's value add is actually in creating the narrative behind the numbers, in telling the stories, in flagging where the issues and the challenges lie. And that alone isn't good enough either, But what that does is it creates dialogue, and that dialogue leads to transformational change. So I think civil society's value is in that, in creating the dialogue, in also generating time-sensitive, responsive data that can be used as a neutral source, something like the SafeCast platform introduced in Japan after the Fukushima disaster. That again creates a trust in government, it creates a dialogue, and it leads to change. And that's what civil society can do, on top of the holding government to account, which is, of course, priority, probably number one. But there's a whole additional value add that civil society can add.
And the data you mentioned that you gather, is that accepted in official statistics? Because, I mean, you need to make sure that they're viable and reliable.
Well, yes, and that's why we're talking about the development of data. I mean, we are actually statisticians, and we can't work it alone. And this is why we have the UN World Data Forum. This is how I want to ask now, in the UN World Data Forum now, how many policymakers we have in the UN World Data Forum. Are we statisticians talking alone by ourselves? How many we have academics here? How many we have in the private sector? This is the aim why we wanted to work together and to develop the data with the civil organization, with the private sector, and with the policymakers. All the time we suffer as national statistical offices that we have a gap between us producing the official statistics and the use of statistics by policymakers. And this is what we want, to bridge the gap. Yes, I'm a statistician. I know how to produce official statistics, but I'm not really good in data literacy, and I need your help in really actually working on narratives, because I work on numbers. I'm not really good in narratives, and that's how we really do that kind of complementary work, and that's how we have to work together. So that's why data is not about only official statistics, it's beyond official statistics.
You mentioned narratives. Please. Narratives have been mentioned a couple of times now, but I see a danger, and the danger is called blah, blah, blah. To quote Greta Thunberg, I think it was this week in Berlin, where she had this speech. She says there's always a lot of words, and we come back to the topic of climate change. The greenhouse gases are on track to rise by 16% by 2030. That's nowhere near where they should be. So how to make sure that the narrative is not only out there, but it's also really perceived and acted upon. David?
Yes. I mean, no. When I started in this field, I first thought, really deeply believing as a physicist, that data would speak for itself. And I had to learn it my own way. And I think what's really new is that also in the latest IPCC, we have now storylines. So, and that's quite a challenging thing for a scientist to do. But to say the what if without providing a probability, but to say there is just one option which is so sobering you would not want to tinker with. And we didn't do that before. And I think there you see these narratives converging. And the blah blah part, I have no problem with that as long as it's a public deliberation of options, because then you learn. And then you probably build an option, and then you have to be bold enough and honest enough to go to the statisticians and say, does your data support my hypothesis, or just have a bluntly debunk it? And what we learn in the climate story, yes, our nationally determined contributions are by nowhere near the target.
Yeah, and the public dialogue and comparing the data, I mean, that's fine, and it's normal to have different positions, and it's really important in science to do that. But these days, in the public discourse, there's also this tendency that everyone insists on having their own facts and to their own data to justify their opinions. So, Vincent, in a way, are we steering towards a world where it's simply my data versus your data?
Well, we are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're 6. Anybody want to challenge that now? I mean, there are facts out there. They might, again, not sell
I'd find you somebody on the internet who challenged that.
Well, they'll probably say it'll be 6.5, right? Right. The point I'm trying to make, yes, there are facts out there, but you have to understand one thing now, that facts are opportune for agendas too. And there's one more thing to reason about here, namely, we think of information and data as something that informs us. It's something that we use for action, for deliberation, decision, and action. And that's the reason why we have statistical offices, to make sure that we have evidence-based policy. Period. However, once we realize all of a sudden that data is worth something in and by itself, not in terms necessarily of setting an agenda, but in terms of money. And since we have attention economic models of the way in which we have our attention being allocated, then that generates engagement. Engagement generates data, and data you can sell and curate and sell it to the advertisers. So all of a sudden there's a peculiar value to data. So there's also an opportune fact or an opportune possibility in thinking on what sort of information people are willing to spend their attention on, and then peddle that in the system instead. And then you have that problem all of a sudden, namely that the structure of the information market in the attention economy feeds an opportunity for selling stories that are not necessarily true, but tends to gain a lot of attention. And then you end up in post-factual democracy where you have your facts and I have mine, and they could be culturally based and whatnot. But even so, when you build a bridge or an information infrastructure, it's good to know that 2 + 2 = 4, not 5. So everybody tends to also use the truth when it's opportune to actually move somewhere. And with the 17 sustainability goals, we have to move somewhere. And so as we're going to need data reliably acquired. And then truth is not truth for me, truth for you. Truth is truth.
I think that's really important. And
thank you.
Truth is truth.
Truth is truth.
Give it up for truth, yeah.
Because that's the problem. The federal councillor quoted Churchill. There's also another British Prime Minister, Benjamin Disraeli, with a really famous quote. There are 3 types of lies: lies, damned lies, and statistics. And so what I'm just wondering, what do we do? Because they can be so manipulated by vested interests. I think Nicola was referring to this, and the social media companies and how they take our data and so forth. Any thoughts here?
Yes, that's why, we have threats. We have threats when we talk about privacy, when we have to talk about confidential data, and that's really very important. How you can build the trust when you have doubts on, misuse of personal data and really confidential data, and that's really make a big difference. So, yes, there are so many developments on the ground, but we have to make sure, working on developing data, how we can really ensure trust in data. That's really very important, privacy and confidentiality.
Yeah. But that's a huge task. Do you think that the statistical officers and data scientists, from the perspective of civil society, are they up to that task, bringing that clarity?
I think that they need to work in collaboration with civil society to create that trust. Once there's transparency in where the data is gathered, how it's gathered, and how it's used, you're building trust. And with that built trust, you're building dialogue and you're building change. And so I think, no, they're not up to the task alone, certainly not. But through partnerships, SDG 16 and 17 essentially, governments can build the trust needed to make the changes.
And they have to get into the information streams that matter.
There's another lovely quote that I wrote down. If you've ever seen this TED talk of the psychologist, Professor Brené Brown, and she says, maybe stories are just data with a soul. Yeah? And I really love that. And this idea that data tells stories. And I think, perhaps we can think with COVID-19, the data wasn't enough. That was the logos, what the Greeks call. We need the pathos. We need the stories. We unfortunately, we need to see the pictures of the people in the ICU units. We need to make it real, that this is impacting people's lives. How do we do this?
Good leaders will definitely always refer to the pathos in the sense of what are the values that drive us and refer to those. But there's also a danger in it. And I see their data as a tremendous opportunity for us to defend democratic processes. Because if data is really open government data, then, say, at least experts, but also experts in dialogue with others, have a chance to debunk hypotheses which are a bit too much on the pathos, may I say, pathological level of things. And that's very important, because it's so kind of tempting to oversell a story And there I see data also as a corrective in our society, very much.
Yeah, yeah. And then there has to be the data literacy that there is that correction. Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking of the following. Look, I mean, you can try to insult people in a million different ways from Sunday, okay? But there's one particular way of insulting us that we don't like, namely, don't insult my intelligence. We don't like that, period. Nobody likes that. And that's because that's a part of the fabric of us being reflective human beings, that you don't insult our intelligence. And no matter whether you're for or against conspiracy theories about COVID and whatnot, you don't like to get insulted on your intelligence. So maybe we should try to move forward in such a way that we don't insult anybody's intelligence, but at the same time, we realize that information may actually insult people's intelligence, right? And that is just one where we do not want to be insulted. And so nobody wants to be uninformed on purpose, most of the time. There are some times where I'd like to be ignorant, but mostly I don't want to be. And if we could make that trend, we could make that stick.
Yeah, but if you make it,
Yeah.
you want to make it, yes, please?
Yeah, so that's why communication is important. So communication is really important between different stakeholders and partners, and this is how we can really move on.
I'm just thinking that perhaps that's a very nice segue to say thank you, panelists, for communicating your ideas, and we are going to move on to the next part. So I would like to ask everybody to give a round of applause to our great panelists.
Thank you.
It's a great discussion, thank you. So I'm sure it will inspire a lot of conversations at this very forum. And by the way, you wouldn't be the first to have groundbreaking thoughts in this city of Bern, because Albert Einstein used to live here as well. So there you go. Who knows, maybe there is such a thing as the spirit of Bern, and if there is, the person to know best is the mayor of this beautiful city, Mr. Alec von Gaffenried.
Monsieur le Conseil fédéral, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear United Nations family of statistics. Grüß euch miteinander, herzlich willkommen hier in Bern. It's a great honor for us. Thank you for this very inspiring opening session. I think the World Data Forum has been launched in a very good way right now. It's a great honor for us to welcome you all here on that third World Data Forum in our city of Bern. I'm very happy that many of you managed to come here despite the ongoing COVID pandemic. Welcome also the even bigger number of you that follows us online. I'm very glad that the UN World Data Forum this year can take place in a hybrid form and make it possible for everybody to participate. This suits very well to one of the very central principles of the Agenda 2030 and its Sustainable Development Goals, namely, leave no one behind. Leave no one behind is a value that you share very much in the city of Bern. Our claim of the last legislative period was to create a city of participation, Bern City of Participation, where all citizens are welcome to help to shape our city actively. And only a few months ago, the government of the city of Bern adopted our new strategy of sustainability, which is based on the 17 SDGs of the Agenda 2030. But we also emphasize on equal chances. We can even come up with some records here. As you know, women's voting rights was only introduced in Switzerland just 50 years from now, in 1971. So this was later than anywhere else in Europe, well, apart from the Vatican, I think. This was a negative record. Today, however, from the 80 members of our city parliament, we have a city parliament with 80 members, and 56 are women, so we have a precise 70% share of women in the parliament of the city of Bern. So this is a positive record. And the people like it. Our residents seem to appreciate our initiatives. Population surveys revealed that 83% of the population are satisfied with the quality of their life here in Bern, and even 97% like to live in Bern and hope you all will be part of it in the next 3 days. These very high numbers of approval are not only fake news, but are serious data being collected by Bern Statistics. It's our statistics department. I'm proud of what we have already achieved, but I'm also convinced that still a lot has to be done here and, of course, on a global level in order that no one shall be left behind. But only what is measured will be managed and will be done. I hope you enjoyed the stay in our city, the city of Einstein. If you stroll to the old town, you will find UNESCO World Heritage, but right in the center of the old town, you will find the famous house where Albert Einstein lived at the beginning of the 20th century and where he first described the theory of relativity in 1905. In fact, he not only wrote the theory of relativity in 1905, but he wrote 4 articles within 5 months. And the 4 articles are the most cited articles in physics, are between the most cited articles, the 10 most cited articles in physics in the 20th century. So from then on, city of Bern is also a city of science. But in the old town, you will also find shops where you can buy chocolate for your families at home. Bern is the capital of Switzerland, but Bern is also the capital of Swiss chocolate. For example, Toblerone has been invented in Bern, and still today, every single bar of Toblerone that you can buy in Tokyo, Toronto, or Torino is produced in Bern. So don't forget that when you see a bar of Toblerone. It's 46 million kilos a year, by the way. Finally, I would like to thank the United Nations, the Swiss Confederation, and the Swiss Federal Statistical Office for having chosen the city of Bern as the venue for this very important conference. I also thank the organizing committee for their great work. We heard it before. There are very high expectations, and very clear expectations also, of the youth speakers. It is crucial for the future of our planet to follow the goals of the Agenda 2030. It's a great challenge, but go for it. In that spirit, I wish you an interesting conference, and I hope you will have some as inspiring insights as Albert Einstein had in 1905. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. You heard it. Bern is a great place to be. UN World Heritage Old Town, plenty of chocolate and women in Parliament, of course. What else?
Chocolate. I
Yes.
think you've got chocolate in your goodie bags.
And there's one thing. We have rain forecast for the next couple of days, and it's probably the only city where you can walk around without getting wet. Try it. Most of it is covered in the Old Town.
There we are. Okay. So, something a little different now, some British humour. So, I'm not going to talk about the surreal world of taking back control at the petrol pump.
No.
I'm going to take you back to another surreal world, a happier world, the world of Monty Python. You might remember that famous sketch, What Have the Romans Ever Done for Us? There's a Swiss version. Arthur.
Of course there's a Swiss version, because if there's one thing we Swiss are known for around the world, it's humor. Oh, no, really. One of the most famous sentences, and every Swiss in the room can tell you about it, one of the most famous sentences in this country is, rire, c'est bon pour la santé. Right?
Laughter is good for your health.
So
check it out on
and
YouTube.
Because we want to give you a little different take on data and statistics, a little reminder, no matter how serious the issues get, don't forget to smile every once in a while. We have prepared a little video for you. I hope you enjoy it. I see you tomorrow or at the reception right after this.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Als Kommerzkammer ist es unsere Pflicht, administrative Entlastung für unsere KMUs zu schaffen. Schauen Sie, es macht mich einfach rasend, wie viel kostbare Arbeitszeit und Ressourcen wir jedes Mal für die unnützen und überkomplizierten Fragebögen wir verschwendet.
Und das schon seit 160 Jahren.
Dem muss jetzt endlich ein Ende gesetzt werden. Richtig. Deshalb fordern wir eine Schweiz ohne Bundesamt für Statistik. Die haben keinen Respekt mehr, die Halunken. Skrupellos nehmen sie Einblick in unsere Geschäfte und wollen alles von uns wissen. Und was bekommen wir von ihnen als Gegenleistung?
Den Zensus.
Was?
Die Volkszählung.
Ah, das. Ja, das stimmt. Ja, das haben sie uns gegeben, das ist wahr.
Et le calculateur statistique de salaire. Ah oui, le calculateur des salaires. Tu te souviens, früher konnte man sich nie mit den anderen vergleichen.
Also gut, ja, ich gebe zu, ja, die Volkszählung und den Lohnrechner, das haben die Statistiker für uns gemacht.
Vornamen-Hitparaden der Neugeborenen.
Ja, die Vornamen-Hitparaden, wer interessiert das schon? Also nochmal, was bringt uns das? Mal abgesehen von der Volkszählung, dem Lohnrechner und der Vornamen-Hitparade.
Projekzioni della via.
Stimmt. Damit ziehen wir ab, wann wir der Altersarmut verfallen werden.
Des chiffres sur les inégalités hommes-femmes.
Der ökologische Fußabdruck.
Gut, ja, das sollte man vielleicht noch erwähnen, ja.
Ah oui, ça permet de calculer les dommages environnementaux qu'on va laisser à nos enfants. Und nicht nur unseren Kindern, sondern auch unseren Kindeskindern.
Und auch unseren Kindeskindern. Und auch unseren Kindeskindern.
Ja, also genau müssen wir doch das gar nicht wissen.
Ja, stimmt, so genau müssen wir es nicht wissen.
Le taux de l'inflation.
Guter Punkt.
E poi in generale per poter prendere decisioni giuste. Se non si sa come le cose stanno, come si fa a prendere decisioni politiche giuste?
Ah, là, les statistiques ont un vrai avantage. Denn wie politische Entscheidungen früher Blindflug getroffen wurden, darüber wollen wir nicht reden.
Nee, darüber wollen wir gerade gar nicht reden.
Also gut, mal abgesehen von der Volkszählung, dem Lohnrechner, der Vornamenhitparade, den AHV-Hochrechnungen, den Fakten über Genderungleichheiten, dem ökologischen Fußabdruck, der Inflationsrate und dem Stand der Dinge, um richtige Entscheide fällen zu können. Was, frage ich euch, was bringen euch die Statistiken?
Sie dienen als wichtiges Messinstrument bei der Umsetzung der 17 Ziele für nachhaltige Entwicklung.
Und helfen uns somit, unseren schönen Planeten zu retten.
Der Planet retten. Bist du besser still? Ich schlage vor, wir fragen unsere Delegierten, ob sie für meine No-BFS-Initiative einstehen oder nicht. Dann geht euch dann schon das Licht auf.
Sie wollen eine Befragung machen?
Ja.
Was faktisch gesehen in einer Statistik münden wird.
Lassen wir das. Was ist der nächste Punkt auf der Traktandenliste?
Unsere Jahresbilanz in Statistiken.
Lassen wir doch nicht zu!